So The Adventures of Captain Marvel was a serial film that came out in 1941. Much like a lot of the DC shows, movies, and serials that came out around this time, a lot of their backstories were different, right? And the same is true for Captain Marvel. It is honestly weird saying Captain Marvel now today, knowing that Marvel comics have their own Captain Marvel, and this version of Captain Marvel is now named Shazam. It's really weird, but to really simplify it for someone who may not know about it, Shazam was known as Captain Marvel. They changed it to Shazam because Marvel had their own hero named Captain Marvel. So there's that confusion. He's now known as Shazam. But back then, for this serial in 1941, he was still known as Captain Marvel. Anyway, as I was saying, much like a lot of other DC characters around this time period, his origin story was very different. Instead of him being an orphan child, in this older version of Captain Marvel / Shazam, he's actually a young man who's a radio broadcaster who joins a archaeological expedition to find the Golden Scorpion. During this expedition, he of course runs into the wizard Shazam, which grants him the powers of Captain Marvel. But after Billy Batson receives his powers as Captain Marvel, the expedition find what they were looking for, the Golden Scorpion. And to ensure that the power of this artifact doesn't fall into the wrong hands, what they do is they split it amongst the rest of them. And due to this, we are introduced to the villain of this serial, known as the Scorpion, who wants the power of this Golden Scorpion. So it's all related. Now, I will get into the Scorpion, the villain, later on, but for now, I just want to talk about the actor that played Billy Batson. What was his name? Frank Coughlin Jr. as Billy Batson. I really liked. I thought he had a lot of... I'm just going to say this now. The performances in this serial are very poor, but I did like Frank Coughlin Jr. as Billy Batson because he had he brought a lot of energy and youthfulness to the role. It made him feel very likable. But when he's Captain Marvel, he freaking kills people. At one point, he grabs a machine gun and shoots the bad guys in the back. I can't say for sure whether or not Captain Marvel / Shazam actually did that in the comics, if that was a thing that he was doing back then, because as some Batman fans would know, Batman used to carry a gun and kill people. So I'm not too sure if that is how the character was back then. Or if even just the writers of the serial just got it completely wrong. Regardless of that, even though he kills, I still like Frank Coughlin Jr. as Billy Batson, but when he's Captain Marvel, even though he kills, I like him anyway. He's a badass. I remember this one scene where he's interrogating one of the bad guys, and this bad guy says that he can identify the Scorpion by his voice, to which Captain Marvel's response is,
"All right, I can use you. Come on."
I mean, he could call the cops. He could get the authority on them, but he just decides to take the whole situation into his own hands. He is a badass. Alright, so now let's get into the villain. The villain, named the Scorpion, I thought was a bit lacking. I didn't expect too much from a villain for something that came out so long ago, right? I mean, there's nothing really emotionally tying us to the villain. There's no real motivation for this villain. He just wants world domination. That's all he wants. But the one thing that I thought did kind of work for me was the mystery behind who the Scorpion is. Throughout the entire serial, the Scorpion wears a mask, right? And we never know who this guy is. Now, if that were the mystery behind the Scorpion and who he is, that wouldn't be enough. What they do is they tell you pretty much early on that the Scorpion is actually one of the men from the expedition. He's one of the core characters, right? So that honestly kept me watching. That was one of the, say, only a couple things that kept me watching till the end. And I'll say this now about the mystery about who the Scorpion is. They really did a good job of keeping that so secretive until the very, last scene in the very last serial of this whole thing. Other than that, though, I guess that's all my positives. I must admit, for something that's so old, it was really hard for me to get through this. Even though I liked Captain Marvel, I liked Frank Coughlin Jr. as Billy Batson, I liked the mystery behind the villain. Other than that, it was really tough to get through this because of how old it is. As I said earlier, the acting is very poor. The video and audio quality is atrocious. I mean, because of how old it is and when it came out. But there's also a lot of editing problems, stuff like that. It's just, technically speaking, it's very hard to get through because of how old it is. But I did get through it. And if you are someone who likes watching older stuff, you're a bit of a film buff, in that way, the link is right here somewhere. So you can go and watch the whole serial. It's up on YouTube. So if you are into older stuff and you do like DC, go and give it a shot. You might actually like it. Anyway, I guess that's my review for Adventures of Captain Marvel. I will see you in my next video.